mai, haere mai, e te whānau. Welcome to the Flight of the Next podcast. I'm Holly on Gadigal land in Sydney, as is Danny, and in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, we have Erin. We will talk about two games today. We'll talk about the men, and then we'll talk about the Ferns game that happened yesterday. We'll start with the men. Marco back, which was crazy. Geralda's got a start. He was, I thought, really, really good. Luke Brooke-Smith with a goal, also awesome. So that was Saturday away, and I'll talk to you guys about what it was like there. I'd love to hear what it was like there. Let's see. So the XG was 2.15 to Jaffa FC and 1.03 to us. So I'm assuming that we only lost 2-1. Danny?
Yeah, love it. So, strange game to talk about. You've covered some of the good points. There were some not so good points. But in the sort of theme that we've had of this podcast of how to deal with grief, I've been sort of having a look this week, and another really good method for dealing with grief is compartmentalizing it. So you take away, compartmentalize the things which cause you grief, you put them to one side, deal with them on their own, and take other stuff to the other side and deal with that. So I'm going to deal with the stuff which doesn't make me upset, which is many of the things you talked about, and we can talk about the occasion later because I thought that was really good. It was amazing. But Heraldez, I thought, was excellent. For an import to come in and play 90 minutes is unusual. And to have, he started off really well, and you could see he was shouting at all the players about where he wanted them to be, where they should be. So he wasn't just, okay, let's see what happens. He was getting involved and moving people around where he wanted them to be. And his flicks and his touches were good. His technique was excellent. And he definitely helped our attacking, very much so, hugely. He got back a little bit in defence, but not hugely. But that's not, I guess, what he's in the team for. He certainly looked like he will be able to have a serious effect on the A-League and on this team going forward if he plays, and I'm assuming he will play basically every match because that's why we brought him in for. So that was really positive. I thought he was excellent, and I expected him to play a few minutes and be fairly quiet, but he wasn't. He played the whole game and was involved in most of our attacks. Basically, did really well. Marco, the guy who we bought in to replace, also came on, which is like, okay, that's a bit weird, right? Did it just take us that long to get him? He was also really good as well. Again, didn't look rusty. Only had the 20 minutes, but came on. Again, we just looked so much better going forward when we've got one or two of them on the pitch. Admittedly, at the end, we were just throwing everything forward, hence some of the goals, I think. But that was sort of fairly entertaining to watch. And then we had Luke Brooke-Smith, who had a brilliant game. I thought he was really good. Yes, the one mistake which led to a goal, but the urgency and the commitment he had of getting forward, of beating a man, or getting back to re-tackle someone if he's lost the ball. Something we haven't seen for a long time. The kind of effect in a game Walker, who's played more minutes than him, doesn't seem to be able to manage as yet. And he scored a goal, which is great. So, again, compartmentalizing things a lot. I really enjoyed this game in terms of our attacking play. If you look at the number of shots we haven't had that many shots since we lost 4-1 to Western Sydney Wanderers. Okay, seeing a pattern a little bit here. But, so much more entertaining than probably any of the last sort of 6 or 7 matches where we've defended well but had nothing going forward. So in that little small compartment, we looked really good. And I'll let Erin talk about the rest of the game.
Yeah, well, we were complaining last week about setting up with 10 defenders, and so we decided this game to just have no defence at all. And it obviously did not go well for us. But yeah, I think our attacking play looked very promising. The new guy comes in and he's quite tricky. He's doing fun little volleys over people's heads and controlling the ball. I think near the end he probably started to maybe do a little bit too much and kind of lost the ball, but I don't really mind that when you're losing. Sometimes you just got to do what you can to create something. And it was fun to watch. And it was good to see Rojas get back on as well after a season-ending injury. The medical team for the medical team for this team must be earning their wages because they're getting people back on the pitch way earlier than expected, which is good. And a goal to Luke Brooks-Smith, who, I called last week for him to have more minutes, and it's so good to see him get his goal on his mum's birthday, which he promised to do. So that was really cool to see. But yeah, just unfortunately, the defense just wasn't in it for a team that's supposed to have, one of the better defensive records in the league. There was just kind of no urgency to close down players, and you've seen from watching any of the games that they're happy to take shot from distance, and they just have to hit it hard enough and it will probably go in, which is what they've been doing. And to see kind of no urgency to close people down and to kind of let them have time to take a shot. I think 3 or 4 of them were just deflections off us, which, wouldn't happen if we were close enough to block it down fully. And kind of that's where the goals came from. I think Moreno, who had his hat trick, he only had an XG of 0.19. That's not a hat trick. Seeing that on paper, you're like, what happened here? But they were just taking their chances, and they were just, shooting on sight almost. And we weren't doing anything to stop it. But I kind of just was an entertaining game. I don't know. We move on, I guess.
I mean, I feel like we conceded 3, and that felt insurmountable, and then we came back, and in the 50th minute was when LBS scored, and it felt at that point like we could have a comeback, even if we didn't win, maybe you score an extra goal and things get interesting. Then they scored. It was a little while, it was about 10 minutes after that, but I feel like after they scored that 4th goal, we kind of folded a little bit. Some of the goals were just too easily given up. The last one by Jesse Randall, Roofs really should have closed him down to put in, at least try to put in a block, and he just doesn't. So I think we just we gave up at that point. It's psychologically, you just, I don't know, you don't check out, but it does make it a lot more difficult. And I think that Roofs was just gassed at the end because it was uncharacteristic of him to not go that extra 1 meter just to try and put a foot in. One of the other talking points was their 3rd goal, which was Rogerson in the 40th minute. He's not called offside, and then he's called offside, and he's not called offside. I don't know if you guys have seen the image with the lines. It makes no sense to me, honestly, and maybe I'm being a bit one-eyed, and a lot of people have pointed out, well, it still would have been a 5-1 win even if that goal had been chalked off, but the lines seem to like go through people's feet or like come from weird places, and I've been thinking about it, and I've realized it's one of those magic eye puzzles. Remember those from when you were a kid where you have to like put it at the right angle, and you have to like squint and cross your eyes a little bit so you can see the picture. That's what I think that is. It's a magic eye puzzle. Because honestly, I could not make sense of that. Again, even if it wasn't chalked off, we would have lost 5-1, although maybe that 3rd goal not being conceded could have been a way forward for us. It's all moot anyway, but those lines just made no sense to me.
I'm just holding up a sign that says bargaining, Holly, although I don't actually have one. But there we go. Okay.
Bargaining. Look, it's fruitless bargaining. We lost. Even at that, we would have lost 5-1. It was just something that I could not make head or tails of that whole time. So I've decided it's a magic eye puzzle. Do you guys want to talk about what the experience was there?
Just sorry, on the 3rd goal again, I think we probably deserved to set a goal in because we just let someone free at the far post for about the 4th time. And just in terms of the defending, because I'm happy to talk in that compartment now, our defending was awful, and we let them have so much space at the top of the box. It was just so clear that between the penalty spot and the edge of the box, we had no defenders there, and they had attackers there. And it wasn't even that they were running into that space particularly; they were just standing there. And so whenever they pulled it back, they had someone that had to have a shot, and they had a shot, and they have pretty clinical strikers to do that, and that's why they got at least 4 of their goals, I think. And then they were chipping crosses into the far post, and we were going toward the ball rather than going back to defend the player. And that's how Rogerson got his third goal. I thought he was offside originally, but then looking at it, I actually think Kenny Heal's foot probably played him onside. But either way, we didn't deserve not to get that, and we slightly got away with their disallowed goal because Payne drew the foul really nicely. I thought the little push in the back, and he went down like someone had punched him in the face. So that was quite good. But defensively, we were dreadful. And as you say, we sort of gave up at the end. I don't think we gave up. We just pushed everything forward. When Rojas was coming on, I was like, oh, I presume Chico's coming off then. But no, Chico stayed on, took Piper off, I think. And we just threw things forward. And I think they were a bit shell-shocked at the back. And so that just stopped them really going for it. I don't know why we were so bad. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have a big debrief about it. My theory is possibly we had a very young midfield. We had no Rufa, we had no Retro, we had no Nagasawa in our midfielders. So everyone was out there was young. It was Sheridan, it was Conchi, it was Piper, and Walker, not really defensive midfielder. And I'm just wondering if they just didn't have that kind of game management to say, okay, we've got to be at the top of the box there because that's where their attackers are going to be. They were hoping for the ball to come further out so they could pick up and then push on the attack. But it was really noticeable that we just didn't have that defence around the top of the box, which we're normally really good at. And remember, our defence is really good. We're the third best defence in the league, fourth now, I think, after we've let 6 goals in. But I did have a look. We talked about our defence has not been as good as last year. We lost Paulson, we lost Sermon, and we keep scoring these silly young goals by young defenders like Hughes and Sheridan, and it's just not as good as last year. But up until this game, we'd played 16 games and we'd let in 19 goals. Last year, after 16 games, we'd let in 18 goals. Our defence is actually the same as it was last year, just as good as it was last year. So this is very unusual to let 6 goals in like this. We had a game similar against Western Sydney, when again, we pretty good going forward, and we let 4 in. And then after that, we didn't really let many in again. Couldn't have also let 4 goals in a game. That turned out to be a fluke, a random thing, and they've gone back to being really decent on defence. I don't see that this has to be the new thing. There's a lot of talk, people saying, oh, we're awful, we're terrible. It's like, okay, we were terrible yesterday, Saturday, defensively, absolutely, but it's not how we normally have played. I don't see why this should follow through to the next game. It seems far more likely, based on what we've seen in the rest of the season, that we'll go back to being pretty tight in defence and probably not so good going forward. We've got to get that balance now with Chico. That might be a bit more difficult, but we're still going to find that balance. So as terrible as we were, and again, you can hold up a sign saying denial, I'm not seeing this as like a season-ending defeat. I'm hoping it's a start of a different way that we're going to play. We'll get our defence back in line, and now we've got something that we can actually hurt teams going forward. But yeah, probably denial.
Yeah, I agree with you, Danny. Like the whole team was almost just full of young people, and sure, we lost 6-1, but it's a good sign that we have these young kids stepping up. I know I'd rather us lose 6-1 with the young people than lose 6-1 with a bunch of our experienced players on, which, we conceded 3 in the second half when Rufa and Rojas and everyone else came on, and so it's almost the same there. But I don't know. I just feel like I don't see it as negative as some other people have been seeing it. I just think because we did look quite good going forward, and our defense doesn't usually play like that. And I think if we tighten that up coming to the next game, we'll actually probably put out a pretty decent performance. And who knows what can happen now. We're still only 7 points out the top 6. There's still quite a few games left of the season. I don't think it's pack up and go home yet. I think as long as we still have a mathematical chance of getting through, then anything can happen. It's the A-League. It changes every week. Players throw a hissy fit and leave, and then suddenly you've got completely different teams. And so I think that it was a good and bad performance at the same time, if that makes sense.
I think what stings is that it was against Jaffa FC. That's what stings. I would rather have lost that game 6-1 to bloody Brisbane Roar, bottom of the table, worst team ever, than lose that to our rivals. I think that's what really was awful about it. And I think people would be upset still if it did happen to another team, but maybe less so. Maybe it hurts a little bit less. But the fact that I don't know what the aggregate was, but they've definitely flogged us on aggregate. I think it was 10-2 on aggregate for them. That's really disappointing. So, we really could have looked to put up that performance pretty much any other game than this one. There's been a lot of anger. There's been a lot more anger, I think. A lot of people calling out Chiefy, calling out the owners, calling out Domi to sort of front up and speak about this. I don't know that that's necessary. I do understand the anger, but I think we do just keep supporting, because, well, what else can you do? And I like to try and remind people who are complaining about the club that we do actually have two teams. We do actually have a women's team that's doing relatively well and does need a lot of support. But let's loop back again to your match day experience at the stadium.
Yeah, so this is my first derby that I've been to, and because I can get to the other two. So I was really looking forward to it. And, look, the whole day, again, the result was excellent, was really good. A proper away day. Obviously, living in Sydney, the majority of the games I go to are away matches. And when you get a big one, it's really good. Some of the games we don't get so many, the smaller grounds, but sometimes we have a big event, whether it's a final or whatever, a big game, and getting a large number of Phoenix fans together in another city is just a great feeling. It's one of the reasons why we support teams, right? It's the whole community camaraderie, all that sort of stuff. And the more you have, the better. And this was that sort of really ratcheted up a notch. So, because someone said 900 Phoenix fans there. I don't know what the number is, but something around that level. And just from the start of the day in the city centre, one particular pub, which was all Phoenix, quite a bit of media knocking around, and then going to the stadium on the train. The whole train is Phoenix fans, basically a few Auckland fans, but they kept a bit quiet. And then walking to the ground, just that whole thing builds up to the game. It's not just turn up, watch a game, and then leave. It was that whole build up. Mount Smart, again, not a stadium I've been to before, so I was quite interested to see how that went. And look, on a beautiful sunny day like it was on Saturday, with a full crowd, superb, really good match day experience. Looked really good. Don't think I'd like to be there with a smaller crowd on a rainy and cold day, because it's a bit of an open bowl, and I think it would not be much fun. But yeah, looked really good. A lot of families there. Their activations all around the one end of the ground, really impressive. People seem to be enjoying themselves. So they've done a really good job, Auckland. I have to say it, and if they keep the crowds at a reasonable level, they, people will come back and have more, because it's quite a lot of fun, even though the ground is in the middle of absolutely nowhere. So yeah, again, apart from the result, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? It was a really good event, a good day. The Fever Zone was in good voice. I mean, just constant chanting all the way through, so that was great. No real issues with the Auckland fans. There were some in the Fever Zone. I didn't see a lot of it. Some people who were probably deeper in it might have a bit more to say, but really no big issues. When it comes down to it, it's a big derby. I walked back to the stadium, and lots of people, most of them were Auckland fans. Obviously, there was a bit of banter going on. Yes, it was 10-2 in aggregate. I told them if he was going to be any higher, they'd have to take their shoes off to count. But yeah, I don't think that's so well. But just a really good day all in all. I really enjoyed it. So I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, Mount Smart's quite a nice venue when it's full. I've been to quite a few Warriors games there as well, and I've packed that out. Yeah, I think every game last season there was sold out, and so the atmosphere at all the Auckland FC games this season has been pretty similar to that. Almost full stands, and so it sounds really good when it's full. The noise is great. I came in, I think, 2 minutes in, because I was busy finishing my cricket game. But yeah, just coming down the steps down the hill, you could hear both fans chanting, and it sounded incredible from up up top, and so really good atmosphere and a really good turnout from the travelling Phoenix fans, and it's just unfortunate that the result wasn't closer, but people seem like they had a good time, so that's probably what the derby is all about and what we wanted.
Yeah, I did hear a bit of feedback again from the way that the active bay, the away bay was controlled, stuff that had happened last time, and the Phoenix had spoken to Auckland FC about it, and it doesn't seem to have been fixed. So just, and apparently it might have been the case in the active home bay as well. Just people in shirts of the opposition team coming in, which I don't think is wise. Like, I think most people can sit, like, intermingle all in the rest of the stadium, but I think those bays do need to be segregated, and I know that they did that at Sky Stadium. And there was a bit of frustration about, that just security doing absolutely nothing. And I saw that Kaya, who's the next events coordinator or manager or whatever it is, and she was in the bay, and it didn't seem like even she could get red badge to do their job. So that's quite frustrating. And
I did see there was early on, there was one Auckland fan, there was an Auckland fan that was asked to leave, and he was wearing an Auckland shirt. He was sitting with a group of friends, probably 6 or 7 of them. At least 3 of them had Phoenix shirts on, so it's obviously a mixed group. And he was asked to leave, which I was like, okay, I get that, but all his friends had to leave as well. So he was obviously causing no problems whatsoever. He was just sitting with his friends. They got seats there. And that, I'm like, okay, I get that, whatever, but he's not the person who's a problem. There were other people that I could see were asked to leave, none of them wearing Auckland shirts. They were all plain clothes. But obviously they'd gone in there for shits and giggles, for fun, for a bet or whatever it was. Again, this was happening behind me, and I was actually there to watch the football, and I was focusing on that. I didn't actually see if there was any actual trouble other than talking or whatever, and plenty of the Phoenix fans would have been giving it back. I saw one can thrown by Phoenix lot at an Auckland person who was walking past and shouting. Unfortunately, I was like a 9-year-old, and it actually hit a steward, so that didn't make us look that good. I saw Kaya, as you say, the stewards were there and they were watching, and they did throw some people out. Were they doing it quickly enough? Were they, asking for evidence of them not just being there? Because again, if they just stand there and don't do anything, does it matter? If they do nothing until Auckland score and then start cheering, again, it's not as simple as it sounds, because Aucklanders and Wellingtonians look very similar, and they sound fairly similar. So you can't always tell until someone, cheers for the wrong people. And I don't think anyone was really in there to really properly cause trouble. And I may be biased, again, coming from a British background, when, that would have been a bloodbath if, when people get into away ends, or certainly was when I grew up, not so much these days. So I don't think anyone was in there really to cause serious trouble. But, again, you don't want it in there. And if they can help improve that with security, then that might be good. But it wasn't that security weren't doing anything. They were constantly sort of interacting. Did they do enough? I don't know. Again, you'd have to speak to some of the people who were right in the centre of the fever zone, who was happening sort of behind.
That's where most of the feedback that I've heard has come from. I'm glad that the Sickies were doing something. I think it's, maybe you get an Auckland fan in there who's not going to cause trouble, but it's a derby and it's a stupid idea because you just don't know. And I did hear that a can was thrown at an Auckland fan. And this is the thing is, if you segregate people properly, you don't have this problem, because it's not like an Auckland fan walking in there and trying to fight 900 Phoenix fans. Like, that's not that likely, but you will get people who will escalate. And the bigger concern I have is if they're not getting it right with us, what happens when you get Westie Youth or Porter or someone else show up, like some of these more extreme fan groups from some of the other clubs? Someone is going to get their head kicked in. And so it just doesn't make sense that this is just really basic football stuff. And they were told, hey, look, by the next feedback, just say, hey, this is something, it really needs to happen, but they don't know what they're doing, is the impression I get. Well, I'm glad that not everybody who was in the fever zone was frustrated. Do we have any more comments, or should we talk about the next match, which is Friday at home, so at Sky Stadium, Friday, 7:30 p.m. New Zealand time against City. That will be a challenging game. I do hope that people show up for this. I don't know how easy it is to get to with it being a weeknight, and a lot of people will probably be still quite angry about Saturday, but the boys need you, and it's as simple as that. So hopefully we put up a bit more of a fight, so to speak, in terms of defending and attacking. What do you reckon?
I think this is an important one for us to get points from, or at least get a win from, if we're still trying to make that top six. City is sitting in sixth, and so it's kind of a way to. Oh, actually, sorry, I thought there was only 7 points, but then they won yesterday, so now it's gone up to 9. But it's still, it's you need to be beating these teams that are in the top six to make it in there now, and so. If we want to make it in, this is probably a game where we need to try to prove ourselves and actually put on a performance. But they're a good squad, and yeah, be interesting to see what happens now that we've got a few new players in and people are coming back in, and we'll have Sutton back in as well. So anything could happen.
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously, I think it's important that we put a performance on that shows that the weekend was a bit of a blip defensive wise, but also we've also got to be able to, it's Chief's job to be able to sort of merge that attacking ability that we now have, opportunity that we have with the decent defence that we had beforehand. So not going to be simple, but we now have the tools to do that. We do have Rufer. I would hope he would start. Sutton's back. Payne is looking to get back to a bit of fitness. And then we got Chico and we got Rojas to bring on as well. I doubt we'll see both of them on the pitch at the same time again, but they're there to do something. So I think we've got the players that we can get something out of this game. Again, we've got to find that balance yet, which obviously we didn't at the weekend. We've got to do it now. But I think we're capable of it. Again, maybe being a bit too optimistic, but it's important that we show that the weekend was a blip to build the confidence back up of some of those defenders. And a clean sheet would be brilliant, but I would also like to score a couple of goals and just show a bit of attacking. You should show why we brought Chico in and show that LBS wasn't a fluke in one game, and that Rojas can also contribute. Rojas again with his season-ending injury. I'm glad Chiefy is in the medical profession, because I'd always get a second opinion if you went to him, right? Such a most depressing doctor. Yeah, you're out. No.
Yeah, it sounds like Roofs might be in for 90 minutes next week, so that will help. Especially if Retre's still out, because one person we didn't actually mention when we talked about the midfielders that we lost Moel Tai as well, which is one of the reasons to have those youngsters in. Okay, all right, well, please attend or tune in at least if you can. Let us talk about the Ferns. Okay, so the Ferns had their first friendly against Costa Rica in San Jose. That was yesterday afternoon, New Zealand time. 1-1 draw. First goal, which was in the 19th minute, from someone whose name I'm not sure how to properly pronounce, but it's spelt Chinchilla. The little rodent Chinchilla. Nicely worked goal. Tidy finish with the outside of the boot. And then the 46th minute, so right at the end of the first half, Indy Page Riley from the top corner of the penalty box just lobs one in. Nice, tidy goal. I think the star of the show was Vic Essen. That could have easily been a 6-1 loss if it wasn't for Vic Essen. She made a lot of excellent saves. Maya Hahn got a debut, and our very own Mania Elliott got a debut. Erin, you watched it?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be an interesting game from the big shift up we've done with the squad, and saw that he started with the back three, which I think is a bit of a crazy decision when we pretty much dropped all of our most capped defenders and putting in almost a new back three, and I think we kind of got punished for it pretty early on. Big Essen was actually having a blinder of a game to keep so many of those shots out. They were hitting free kicks right into the corner that she managed to stretch out and get a tiny little pinky finger to and knock it out of the way. But yeah, Costa Rica could have had it over and done with at halftime if it wasn't for her. But yeah, a great goal by India, Paige Riley. I think that was a really, really nice shot from out wide. Sneaks it, loops it over the keeper and right into the corner, and going in at 1-1. But I know that the FIFA rankings don't really mean anything because a lot of the women's teams don't play other women's teams of equal skill. And I think we've coasted on our FIFA ranking by playing the Pacific Island teams. And we can kind of see that now that we're dropping through the rankings quite quickly because we're not developing at the same speed as some of the other nations are. But we are ranked higher than Costa Rica, so you'd expect that we'd probably be able to beat them. But I think that they kind of dominated us almost the whole game. But yeah, I think Maya Hahn, I liked the look of her when she came on. I'm glad that she picked New Zealand over Germany. She looks like a very, very tidy player, and so I'm excited to see more of her. It was strange to see Grace Jarley not on the squad. I'm assuming she was injured or something. I feel like she probably would have been a starter if she was fit, just because we played Kelly Brown up top there, which, she's only been back playing one 90-minute game before coming back from injury, and so having her start, I don't think she was overly effective up there. And so I think Grace Jarley would have done a better job. But overall, it's kind of always good to see us get points against a team that's not a Pacific team. But yeah, I think big improvements need to happen for the second game, especially if we're developing this team to go to a World Cup.
I only caught the highlights, so I haven't seen the whole game, but it certainly looked like in the first half at least, well, it looked a bit like a Vic Essen highlights reel, to be honest. But it looked like Costa Rica, just in terms of their speed and their passing, were just slicing open our defence just constantly. So they have some very pacey strikers, including Chinchilla Girl, and their passing was really on point, getting in behind our players. So, we need to do something about that. We seem to pin it down a little better in the second half, although their passing was really, really impressive. I really quite liked it. But, we got the goal, and when I first saw the goal, I was like, is that a cross or a shot? But actually, watch it again. She's looking at that top corner all the way through, so it was absolutely delivered. I thought Katie Kitching seemed to do very well. She's not a player that gets a lot of plaudits, but she always seems to be there or thereabouts when we're scoring goals. She's scoring or she's putting in there. She's got a really good shot. She had a couple of good efforts. One hit the bar and then another one from way, way deep in the second half. I think she's a bit of an underrated player. I think she's quite important for us in terms of an attacking. But as you say, Costa Rica are a decent side. They showed that in the World Cup just gone. And I think these are sort of the teams that is probably good for us to play. It's not the island teams where, I think when Indy Paige Riley scored the goal, it was something like her 7th goal, but her first against. Fair enough. So playing teams like this, which are probably a little bit better than us, and have different skills to maybe teams at this part of the world is really important for us to improve and get better. And yes, that might mean our ranking will go down, but that's just reality. So. I'll be interested to see who we put out in the second game. I imagine there'll be a few changes to try some people out. Also interested to see that Macy Fraser was playing because she hasn't played football for a long while. So, yeah, I have no idea what's happening with her, but good to see her on the pitch.
I think it's the off season for the NWSL, so that's possibly why she hasn't been playing. But yeah, she was excellent as well. Jale was listed as injured. Hopefully that's not too serious because obviously we want her back for ourselves. I think it's good that we have played someone sort of different because, and this is something that Sarah Gregorius talked about when we interviewed her a while back when she was part of FIFPro, the women's development with women's football. She said one of the major issues for women's football is people tend to play just because there's not a lot of money, I think is part of the issue. People tend to play the countries around them and then you don't get like Costa Rica playing South Korea and things like that very often. So it's quite difficult to get that to come together. So I think that has been a good choice by New Zealand football. The next match is on Wednesday, 2 p.m. New Zealand time, also on FIFA Plus. As has been flagged, I'd say that we have some changes. Hopefully Mac Barry gets some time. Any other thoughts about the Ferns' upcoming game, what you want to see, what you don't want to see?
I just want to point out one interesting part. There's just one part of the game that I remembered, but I think it was a transition and they kind of had a fast break, and they were almost, I guess, outpacing our players, or I don't know what was happening. But there was only one player who was chasing them down, and I think managed to get the tackle in. And I was like, I wonder who that is. And it was Anneli Longo. I was like, why? I was like, out of all the players, we put this nice new fresh squad on, and we have Anneli Longo being the one who can chase down their attacking players and get the tackle in. And I'm just like, incredible! What an actual special player she is to be able to still be putting in that kind of effort when she's, I don't know, on her 175th cap or something like that. I just love her as a player, and I'm just really glad to see her still playing.
All right. I did manage to catch our other international player yesterday. So Tiana Jaber played for Lebanon against Kyrgyzstan. I didn't watch the games against Nepal and Myanmar. Apparently they lost those. But yesterday they had a 2-0 win over Kyrgyzstan. Really, Lebanon kind of dominated the game. Tiana didn't have to do too much. Some good tackles. She seems to be the player who at centre-back was starting the play to advance when it had been recovered. So she was advancing the ball, and it was really good to see something sort of creative out of there, or the trust being in her to make that play and be that player. The most exciting things that happened is she did have one shot, which she blasted over the bar, and she also shoved someone. So good old T. We can't wait to have you back again, T, for the next match, which is Sunday at Porirua Park versus Adelaide. We did discuss that on the last podcast. Hopefully we can get a win there. Tickets are only $15. So if you're pissed about the men's team, you don't want to go, spend your $15, go to Porirua Park, watch the women. They will not disappoint you in quite the same way.
I just want to point out, seeing the non-international players having their little holidays now, and a little bit of the thing. Olivia Kelly and Maya McCutcheon off in Fiji. I saw Carolina Villau and Zoe McMeekin looking around Rotorua. And then I saw Olivia Ferguson in Christchurch. So a bit of a different spread of holiday destinations there, but it's nice to see these players get to explore a bit instead of just being confined to the short season in New Zealand and Australia and then, having to go home straight away. So I'm glad they're getting to see the country.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. We will be back next week to chat those 3 games, and we'll see you around. Bye.